Hello, my name is GlitchWitch.JPG. I make videos about internet horror, analog horror, digital horror, creepypastas, internet urban legends, ARGs, and sometimes I talk about movies and video games, but today I'm going to be vulnerable with y'all. That's not something I'm scared to do, because you're so nice to me and the internet's such a friendly, kind place. There's a thing about me that I think I've alluded to it in the past, but I'm coming out very formally today. I'm one of those theme park bitches. I don't want to use the term Disney adult to describe myself. I think I have Disney adult tendencies, but I would not call myself like a capital D, capital A Disney adult. I am a childless, late 20s person who goes to Orlando theme parks once a year. So I know that's not good, that as far as the Disney adult allegations go. But my whole house isn't decorated Disney. I'm a Disney adult about like the Catholic Church more so. That's how my house is decorated. I digress though. I just got back from my yearly trip down to Orlando. I live in Georgia, so it's easy for me to drive down to Orlando. I go once a year with my big group of friends who I love very dearly that I met on the internet. Oh my god. They haven't killed me yet. Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? They say not to talk to strangers on the internet. These people came to my wedding. It's my 5th anniversary of doing this trip that I do yearly, and typically the river that runs through this tradition is Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios. So I went to Halloween Horror Nights this year. Oh my god, Five Nights at Freddy's was at Halloween Horror Nights. I cried. I'm not even joking or being funny. If you are near Orlando or Hollywood, Universal Parks, and you are a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, go. Find a way to go, because I cried. The animatronics were breathtaking. Like, it was crazy. I did a whole thing. I did a whole little, like, Chica park-bound outfit. I hand rhinestoned a Let's Eat shirt. I got a little bucket hat. I had Five Nights at Freddy's gibbets. It was delightful. I had a cashier, when I was buying the Five Nights at Freddy's bucket hat, be like, I watched Mark replay them last night in preparation. It was beautiful. I felt seen. A lot of my, like, special interests aren't really, like, popular enough that you can talk to strangers in public about them. And while I'm not like the world's biggest Five Nights at Freddy's fan, I view Five Nights at Freddy's as a branch off of internet horror. I think Five Nights at Freddy's and internet horror are very intertwined for a myriad of reasons. So it felt good. It felt very special. But Horror Nights was great. You heard it from me here. The Fallout House, don't wait in line for that bullshit. It's not a horror property. I'm not going to get into it. You can fight me in the comments. Their house was great. I went to Epic Universe, the new park, which is crazy. It's one of the most well-designed theme parks I've ever been to in my life. Not to get like theme park nerd on you, but I'm going to do that more later. Trust me. It's great. I did not go to Disney World this year, but I do love Disney World. One of my original special interest was Donald Duck and the Disney Ducks. There's a rich lore of Disney Ducks within the comics. Donald Duck was not created by Walt Disney. He was created by a cartoonist named Carl Barks, and Carl Barks created this whole family tree of ducks. And Uncle Scrooge is involved. It's a whole thing. If anyone ever wants me to just like fuck it and make a Disney Duck video, I'll do it, because it's still in here. These are custom ears that I got made by an artist on Etsy. I'll link the shop below if anyone cares. These are Magica Dispel ears. She is from the comics and she's from DuckTales. This is from the DuckTales reboot, because that's kind of like what that shop owner did. I am more partial to OG 80s DuckTales. That's just me. I'm not going to get into the nuances of the DuckTales reboot and all that. I'm not anti-DuckTales reboot. I just prefer the original. But anyway, Magica Dispel was my OG goth baddie. Love her. I have done everything in my power to physically appear to look like her as an adult woman, besides becoming a duck. I'm not a furry. I just like the Disney ducks. So I've got my Donald Duck on here. My Donald Duck, I don't know if you can see him. He's there. he's there. This is from Fashion Brand Company. This is the pin I got the first year I went to Disney World as an adult because my husband, we didn't go because we'd gotten engaged, but we went with our big friend group and we had gotten engaged, so I made them give me a button. We're married. This is old. This is 5 years old. I've been married for the duration of this YouTube channel. But anyway, because I'm so theme park pilled right now, because I just came home from my yearly theme park trip, I wanted to read a Disney World creepypasta. There are many. The big popular one that I am most familiar with, and really I think the only one that I've ever actually read until today, is Abandoned by Disney, which is kind of a classique. It's like an island type place that Disney, left abandoned. And this one is similar. However, there is some truth to this one that I was not aware of until after I read it, that, it scratched both my creepypasta lover and like kind of shitty creepypasta lover brain, and also my theme park history brain. So I'm combining two loves of mine into one video, and you have to suffer through it. So this is called The River Country Film. It's a short one. Creepypasta.com says it's only 8 minutes of reading, so I'm going to read it to you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it afterwards. This was written November 2nd, 2012, and it was written by an anonymous author. We do not know who wrote this. So this is an older one. This is 13 years old. So without further ado, let's read The River Country Film. It had been 3 years since my family had last gone on a vacation to Florida, something we did annually before the recession hit. Since we now had enough money, my parents decided, under the popular demand of my sister and I, that we both go to Walt Disney World again. We were both teenagers, and our parents saw this as a bit juvenile, but decided it would be fun anyway. I could not wait to finally go back, and neither could my sister. Being avid theme park goers as well, we were especially attracted to the creativity and the, magic, as one would say about the rides there. They never got old and had their share of nostalgia and excitement. However, there was one other reason I wanted to go. You normally associate Disney World with words such as excitement, fun, and happiness, but with these characterizations come counterbalances. After scrolling through OMG Facts one night, I came across a rather interesting fact. It was about an abandoned park in Walt Disney World, apparently named River Country. I was absolutely appalled by this, since I had previously thought of Disney in a more idealistic and perfect way. The water park was directly on the shores of Bay Lake, being that huge, stagnant body of water adjacent to the Magic Kingdom. River Country was, and still is, on the same side as the theme park just mentioned, but right next to a resort called Walt Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort. Surrounding the water park on the resort side is a large green wall with signs dotting it. The place opened in 1976 and used water from Bay Lake in most of the park's attractions. It was very rustic and wilderness-based in design and contained artificial rocks that resembled those used on another attraction, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. There was a dam present to keep chunks of dirt and mud from getting into the water too, so guests didn't have to worry about swimming in an artificial bog created by water from the lake. It was open for 25 years, closing its doors in 2001, and in 2005, a statement released by Disney said that the park would be closed for good. So for about 11 years, River Country has been sitting abandoned. Nature is in its advanced stages of reclaiming the area, but the slides remain. And so do the artificial rocks, and the small pond, now a swamp, that was used for swimming. Many urban explorers have infiltrated the area, jumping over the walls to get footage of the abandoned water park. One of the most controversial things about the park nowadays is why it closed, which is what I was destined to find out. I wanted to see some real footage of the area before it closed as well, since from what I heard, it was very joyous and bustling with tourists, compared to its ghost town status today. I was without internet at the time, so about 2 days before we were planning to leave, I went to the local library, which archived many old videos that people in my community had dug up in their attics and donated to the library to be part of a small historical society. Hoping that I might find some good footage, I asked the librarian if they happened to carry any videos concerning family vacations. She nodded and brought me to a small section, containing many old VCR cassettes and a few DVDs here and there. After about half an hour of searching, I finally came across a cassette with the words, "the old-fashioned swimming hole," inscribed on top of it. This was a term used to describe river country during its glory days, so I took it, almost certain that it was the footage I was looking for. I asked the librarian if I could sign it out, but she told me that the historical videos had to stay in the library. I could, however, watch the video in a small conference room behind the front desk. The librarian led me into the windowless room, and I took a seat in front of the television. She left the room and closed the door so that the audio would not disturb any of the other library patrons. I popped the cassette into the VCR under the TV and turned the lights off so I could see the video better. I was expecting the quality to be low anyway. For about half a minute or so, the screen was gray and was accompanied by a loud beeping noise, typical for old VCR cassettes. The gray soon disappeared, showing footage of two individuals in front of the entrance to river country. They were both men, and it was either very late at night or very early in the morning, as nobody else was in the park. Very few of the water park's lights were on either. On the bottom left corner of the screen, the date, November 1st, 2001, was displayed. This was significant because the water park closed for good the very next day, on November 2nd. The two men were talking about how they'd been denied entrance to the park in the morning, since it had reached the guest capacity limit. They also stated that at only these hours of night could they get past the park security. The two walked up to bigger water slides in the park, which led directly into the pond supplied by the green water of Bay Lake. Once they both got to the top of the slide, which was encircled by artificial orange rocks, one man prepared to slide down. The two laughed over what seemed to be an inside joke, and finally, the cameraman ended up pushing his friend down. I heard him scream in delight as he descended to the pond. The cameraman then proceeded back the way they came to get to the slides and across a bridge that traversed the small lagoon. He ended up back at the pond's shore where the sound of a splash was heard. This is when the video started to unsettle me a little. After waiting at the shore of the pond for about 3 minutes, nobody surfaced. The cameraman began to cry his friend's name frantically and started to run back to get help at the Fort Wilderness Resort. He stopped abruptly, though, at what seemed to be the kiddie area, a small, shallow pond, on hearing a faint cough. He instantly turned around and saw a barely visible shadow about 10 or so feet behind him. Relieved, the cameraman started to approach his friend, glad that he was okay, but again, he abruptly halted. The friend's head was hanging down, and he slowly inched it up. The cameraman started to hyperventilate as the features of the other man's face began to show. Crimson, dry blood was caked around his mouth, and some was even dripping off his chin. He was missing all the hair on his head as well, but one of the most disturbing parts of this image was that there were patches of skin missing that revealed parts of the man's skull and jawbone, and he was even missing his right eye, leaving an empty socket. I became severely nauseous at the sight of this, to the point where I was swallowing my own vomit. My heart also began to race as fear started to settle in my body. As the last minutes of the film approached, the horrendous figure muttered something that sounded like, "There is no hope under the water." With that, the cameraman ran for his life, wheezing and panicking throughout the whole ordeal. I wanted to turn the television off and run myself, so I bolted to the door leading out of the room. I reached for the doorknob, but paused. The television was giving off the sound of an old furnace found in the basement of a home, just in a softer tone. This tone, for some unknown reason, kept me from moving anywhere. I was just staring blankly at the television. The cameraman was still sprinting, but did not seem to be making any progress. He had ended up back at the large pond where the slide had dumped his friend. You could hear him sobbing softly, fearing for his life. Suddenly, the tape began to gradually slow down as the man frantically looked from side to side. The audio volume, along with the furnace sound, went up as the video lagged. Haltingly, the cameraman turned all the way around and shrieked at the sight of his friend. The video paused on this frame, exposing the caked blood all over the other man's face. The top of his skull bone was now completely exposed, his right eye still missing. His mouth was wide open, and coming from it was what looked like a combination of the water from Bay Lake and bile. This stayed on the screen for about 10 seconds and switched to a black screen, displaying one single message: "The epidemic begins today." Instantly, the power went out, and I was left alone in the darkness of the conference room. I became so terrified as I could not see a thing, and I could not see the door either. I began to shake in absolute fear. River Country had closed because of this, and it was obvious. Walt Disney World had been keeping a disgusting secret. I rushed to the other side of the room, disoriented, but all I felt was warm breath seeping down my neck and the smell of bile. was a River Country film. Really not a good creepypasta. And I probably wouldn't have read it if it didn't have the, kind of added real world lore that it has to it, as well as the fact that I wanted to talk about theme parks. Yes, as a creepypasta, I think there are a lot of problems with this. I think he should have gone. I think he should have urban explored. I don't think it should have been a tape. The tape thing makes no sense in this context. How did he get so lucky that this specific tape showing this occurrence, that led to the theme park closing in this universe, was in his hometown? It would have made more sense if they got to Orlando and he went to like the local Orange County library, right? That would have made a lot more sense. The fact that he's like, I don't have internet, so I went to the library, even though he was like, I was on OMG Facts, which was very funny to me. Plot holes. And I know. I don't know why I'm wasting my time picking apart a creepypasta from 2012 about Disney World written by Anonymous. They're probably like an investment banker now or some weird shit. We just don't know. But anyway, it's corny, it's silly, it's not the best. However, River Country was a real place. I didn't know this. So I really like learning like obscure, weird theme park facts, especially when it ends kind of disgraceful for the corporation implicated, right? Like I'm sure many of you know about the YouTube channel Defunctland. Incredible, one of the best channels on YouTube. And Kevin Perjurer, the man behind Defunctland, covers defunct, theme park rides, as well as just like history of mostly Disney, but as well as other theme parks. And I bet he has a video about River Country that either I didn't watch or I just forgot about, because I don't remember anything about this park. And there's obviously the things that happened in this tape are not real and are not why River Country closed. However, the park did close and it did sit dormant for a really long time. So there is some fact into this creepypasta. So I just want to go ahead and talk about what River Country was and what exactly happened and how this creepypasta kind of played with fact in its fiction. I found this article from allears.net, which, my God, when I was planning my original trip, like first adult trip to Disney World, because I had gone to Disney World when I was like a little kid, and then I didn't go for like 20 years. I went for the first time with this group of friends I go with every year 5 years ago, and we did everything. It was the most ludicrous, psychotic thing I've ever done in my life. I was running on adrenaline. I did every Disney park, both Universal parks, and 2 nights of Halloween Horror Nights in a week. I had 1 day off in all of that. I know that they say that, like, oh, there's not a big there shouldn't be a big difference between being 28, like I am now, and what's 28 minus 23? Big difference. 28-year-old GlitchWitch could not be doing all that. But anyway, allears.net and Disney Food Blog were my MVPs back in the day. So I am familiar with the game of allears.net. So I thought they were a reputable source. River Country was the first water park in Disney World's history. They have Typhoon Lagoon now. I think that's kind of what fully replaced this and led to this going bye-bye for real. And the thing that is crazy is it did sit abandoned for almost 2 decades. So when that creepypasta was written, it was 2012. So it had been about 10 years, 11 years since it had closed. It stayed closed and like just sitting there rotting for until the pandemic, which is nuts, because that is not usually what Disney does. Disney is quick to, make use of the land they have and redevelop it very quickly, immediately turning over rides or lands into new things. The whole abandoned theme park thing, you're going to get a lot more frequently from smaller, more independently run theme parks. Infamously in Orlando, there is an abandoned Bible-themed theme park called the Holy Land Experience that was abandoned in 2021. And I think now they have started to demolish it. But when I was first going to Orlando in like 2021, 2022, it was just sitting there. You could see it from the highway. It's kind of eerie, weird, creepy to just have like Bethlehem on the side of the road in Orlando. Very strange vibes. But there are a lot of abandoned theme parks in America specifically, all over the world, and usually they are more independently run. So for Disney to do that, it was a little more, it's surprising. So that had me intrigued. So it originally opened on June 20th, 1976, near the grounds of Fort Wilderness, which I think they mentioned in the Creepypasta. And it was one of the first major additions to the park after all the initial builds happened in 1971. And it is one of the earliest fully themed water parks ever built, period. So it was themed to Tom Sawyer. Gotta love early Walt Disney World. You know, it had your lazy river. It had water slides. It had like a man-made lake. It had like a kiddie play area. So kind of like cutting edge water park technology. I don't really f*** with water parks. I don't know. There's too many little kids running around. And I know, it's not for me, it's for them. You can argue the same thing about a theme park in general. That's why I like Halloween Horror Nights. It ain't for them bitch-ass kids, it's for me. But I digress. I love a pool. Put me in a pool. But a whole water park is a little much for me. The big thing about this water park versus like the modern water parks that we see these days that are usually like chlorine filtrated in like a pool. All the water implements in this park were fresh water from Bay Lake, which the Creepypasta mentioned. So it was clean and filtered and then used in the attractions. So it wasn't like any of the dirty, nasty stuff from the lake. It was clean, it was filtered. And that wasn't really an issue. And I grew up in Michigan where there's just lakes everywhere. I grew up on a lake, and lakes are dirty and gross. It's kind of a like, do what you want to do. If you're comfortable swimming in the lake, go for it. But like, you wouldn't want to pay a shit ton of money to go to a water park and then there's like fish shit in it. You know what I mean? I've swam in plenty of fish shit in my time, swan shit, turtle shit, whatever. But I wouldn't want to do that at Disney World, right? It kind of breaks the immersion. So it was very high tech and utilizing local resources. Now, do I know what impact that had on the Florida ecological situation? No, I don't. And I imagine it probably wasn't good. I just am gonna go ahead and assume that Disney is usually making unethical decisions. So yes, Typhoon Lagoon was Disney's second water park that opened in 1989, and then Blizzard Beach opened in 95, and those were like a lot more intense and exciting than River Country, and they kind of started to overshadow it. So River Country was really impressive in the 70s, but then these, extreme 80s and 90s water parks came in, and Miss River Country didn't really have a chance. Attendance suffered. It started to go down, and it didn't look good. It did close at the time they didn't know for good, but it did close on November 2nd, 2001. Which it usually did for like winter refurbishment, as All Years says on their website. But then it did not reopen after this refurbishment with the two other parks. They didn't really address it. And then finally, they formally announced in 2005 that it was closed for good. There's a lot of speculation as to why this park closed. To me, the obvious thing is just it wasn't performing like the other two. The Tom Sawyer theming is starting to get more questionable as the years go on. I don't think that fully was the whole thing, because we know that They chose to make Splash Mountain in like the late 80s. Just now replaced that like 2 years ago. And I genuinely just think that people were going to Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach, and that really was kind of the death knell. There was a rumor about a brain-eating amoeba, which is what inspired that creepypasta. A website called Yesterland.com that writes about myths and legends in regards to Disney wrote about the validity of this rumor. And here's the thing, folks. Yes, a child who went to River Country did die from a brain disease from an amoeba after swimming at River Country. I keep wanting to say River County. I don't know why. I think it's just because, like, I don't know. We didn't really do this when I lived up north, but in the South, I feel like we talk counties a lot. Like, you're from yonder county, you're from that county, that's up in that county. We do that a lot more down here, so I think my brain is like, you want to say county. But anyway, River Country. So, yes, there was... I'm sorry, I can't... like, child death isn't ever funny, but it's like, kids dying at Disney World is like so, like, the saddest possible thing that it's like shocking. That's why I'm laughing. So, I'm gonna read the... Associated Press story about this incident that Yesterland.com has in their article. This was published Thursday, August 28th, 1980. Note that publication date and how that doesn't really relate to the park closing in 2001. Orlando, Florida. A rare but deadly disease caused by an amoeba found in Florida freshwater lakes has claimed its fourth victim. A New York youngster who spent his vacation swimming at Walt Disney World's River Country. The disease, amoebic meningophilitis, attacks the nervous system and brain, doctors say. It killed 2 Florida children earlier this month and appears to have been the cause of death of another youngster, a state health official said. The latest death was that of an 11-year-old boy who visited the Orlando area during the first week of August and swam at the water attraction at Disney World, said Dr. John McGarry, director of the Orange County Health Department. The child died after the amoeba entered his nose, went through the nasal passage, and attacked the nervous system, including the brain, said Dr. Robert Gunn, state epidemiologist. The boy, who was not identified by New York or Florida health authorities, died last Friday. So 3 other deaths were not from River Country. It was the only place that he had swam in Florida. So yes, it was from Bay Lake and River Country where he contracted this amoeba. There's more from the AP article here in relation to how much responsibility Disney should take. Quote, the 2 officials, Voss and McGarry, said there was no reason to blame Disney World for the tragedy because the amoeba can breed in almost any freshwater lake during hot weather. Officials have said there is no epidemic of the disease in Central Florida where all 4 cases were detected. Disney officials said there wasn't much they could do. We are, of course, concerned and sensitive to any potential health or safety hazards to our guests, said Disney spokesman Charles Ridgway. I don't know of any action that could be taken as a result of this. Ridgway emphasized that Walt Disney World conducts a thorough program of water quality control in cooperation with health officials. So, yes, that happened. Yes, it is real. That is not why the park closed, though. It was kind of a freak accident that's just could happen when you swim in fresh water in really warm places. Like I said, I'm from Michigan. To my knowledge, in my local lakes, there was never any amoeba shit, but sometimes you would hear stuff like, don't go in this lake, we've seen XYZ. So this is a very real thing. I'm scared of it. I grew up very scared of stuff like that and like leeches because I grew up around so much like fresh, still water, being from Michigan. So they didn't close. There were a few other deaths at River Country. They were 2 teenagers who drowned, which unfortunately that's going to happen at water-based attractions. I literally think the only reason it closed, like genuinely deductive reasoning here, it wasn't selling. People didn't want to go to the old crummy water park. They wanted to go to the cool, hip, new ones. So they just closed it. And I'm shocked that it's just sat there for so long. I think that is the most surprising thing of this entire thing, that it took them so long to demolish it. They didn't touch it until 2016. It sat literally dormant, just kind of fenced off until 2016. So it got really popular. There's a lot of urban exploring footage and photographs. It became kind of notorious because it's so rare to get a Disney property sitting there that long. In 2018, they announced that it was going to be a new resort for Disney Vacation Club called Reflections. They halted construction during the pandemic, and it was scrapped. But then very recently, on November 26, 2024, they announced that Reflections was going to be built under the name Disney Lakeshore Lodge, and it's going to open allegedly in 2027. So we will see. I will say, I do think it's sad that an entire area that was a park is just being used for a hotel. I think it'd be cool to see it be used for some sort of park or interactive element rather than just a hotel. But I get it, whatever, hotels make money. It is very interesting. Now, I'm gonna look into exactly what amoebic meningophilitis is. I want to know how much I should be scared of this, essentially, is what I'm saying. It causes meningitis, essentially. It's amoebic meningitis. That's what killed the kid. Don't get water up your nose. Please. Because it has a 98.5 fatality rate. But it is extremely rare. 6 in 1 million human deaths. So, there have only been 381 globally to die from it from 1937 to 2018. So this poor kid really was wrong place, wrong time. And it just happened at, it happening at Disney World is crazy. That's just, those Disney execs were like, God damn it, why? But it doesn't sound fun. So, don't swim in fresh water when it's too hot and, snort up that hot, steamy fresh water because you might get amoebic meningitis and nobody wants that. So, I'm personally a little more frightened by the real amoebic meningitis than whatever the epidemic being referred to in this creepypasta is. I think that, that's the thing, is when children write creepypastas, because this was definitely written by a kid, you can tell ones that were and ones that weren't. They're realistic blood, gore, his eye came out, things like that. That's going to make it scarier. When, now that I'm rushing towards 30, headache, fever, nausea, vomiting, confusion, seizures, lot scarier than my eye falling out. I think I could almost deal with my eye falling out. The complications are brain damage and death. That's scarier than whatever fake illness this child created in this creepypasta. This is awesome for me to read as someone who has diagnosed medical anxiety. I don't swim in fresh water anymore because I live in a very unwatery area of Georgia. So I'm fine. I'm closer to the ocean than I am to fresh water, so we're good. There's just a whole different type of scary stuff out there that I also don't want to think about. Let's just stay out of water. Let's just stay out of water. So this isn't a crazy one, a crazy long one or anything like that, but I just thought it was kind of fun to read, a shitty little creepypasta, learn a little bit about a abandoned Disney park, and also just be corny and tell y'all that I love going to theme parks. Again, if you love horror, if you love Five Nights at Freddy's, or what else was there? Terrifier's there this year. I'm personally not a big Terrifier fan. I don't really like it, sorry. House was cool though. Terrifier's there, Fallout's there again. Didn't love the Fallout house. Jason, Friday the 13th, there's a whole Jason thing. And then the originals at Halloween Horror Nights are always so good. Some of my favorite stuff. But yeah, the FNAF house made me cry. So expect more FNAF content, I will say, leading up to the film, the sequel. Because I am a Five Nights at Freddy's movie defender. I love that movie. I think I've seen it 4 or 5 times. I saw it 3 times in theaters. I've seen it 5 times. I saw it 3 times in theaters. I saw it once with my parents, and then watched it with the friend group that I went to Orlando with. I love that movie. I think it's such a delightful gateway to horror for younger people. And I also do think that it deals with, like, I'm not going to get into it. I'll make a whole video. I'm sorry. I can really psychoanalyze Five Nights at Freddy's, like anyone on the internet can. But I love Five Nights at Freddy's. So expect more of that into the, like, winter months as we get closer to the, well, I guess the fall months, because the movie comes out, like, the beginning of December. November-ish, I'll probably watch some FNAF analog horror. I really wanted to get into Baddington's FNAF tapes because I've only ever watched Baddington's original series, Harmony and Horror, and I love Harmony and Horror, so I'd love to check out the FNAF stuff that they've done. So who knows? There'll be stuff. There'll be stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I'd like to thank my YouTube members. The Creepypasta OCs are up on screen, and then in Survival Horror Emo, we have E-Rob and So-Called Punk, and then in Analog Horror Scary Face, we have Kira Coffer, Albacan, and Charlotte Sabina. If you would like to become a member, you can check out the little join button next to the subscribe button. But as always, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing means the world, and I just appreciate you guys for sticking around with me. So, you know, I guess do go to your local library and see if they have a collection of the community's family videos, because that's a thing that definitely is happening at every local library. Maybe it is, and I'm just stupid. Don't swim in overly heated fresh water and breathe in that water really deep, because you might get amoebic meningitis. And then you won't be able to watch whatever video I make next. And that's really the crime and tragedy of the situation. So don't do any of that. Bye!